Hey, what's going on guys? So today is finally the day where we say goodbye to this guy right here. This is Portal, the custom loop that I did in NZXT's H510 Elite. So I get a lot of questions regarding builds like this. Do I sell them? How much money do I make selling these things? And if not, what do I do with them? Some people seem to think that otherwise I have a lot of these builds just laying around my apartment, and that is not the case. So today is a bit of a laid back video, a bit of a look behind the scenes of what sort of happens with these builds. And we're also going to talk about some of the plans for some of the parts in here. So I'm just letting the loop run for a few minutes here because honestly, Portal has been sitting in my lounge room for the last week, not doing anything. After that, we will drain it, and the drain loop is, or the drain fitting rather, is right down here. A few of you had some questions regarding that. So the idea there is that we can flip the PC on the front facing panel and then everything will be nice and vertical. The drain port will then be facing downwards, so then we can then just drain the system easily. And so while this loop is running, I'll answer one of the biggest questions that I always get from family, friends, and maybe people who just are not familiar too much with the channel. When it comes to building PCs like this, they think that I sell them after I'm done with them, and that is just not the case. So no, these builds are not sold. While they do look nice and it would be nice to buy something like this, hopefully this video clears up why they are not sold. Alright, so draining the loop has proven to be pretty difficult, especially when I've got lots of 180-degree bends and when I've got this sort of complex routed DDC pump rose down the bottom. So draining the loop has been a bit of a problem, and tipping the case back and forward has not really worked out. There's still some parts of liquid here. You can see here there's liquid still in the GPU and there's liquid still in the radiator. So I did try connect another tube to the loop, to the fill port of the reservoir here, and then try and blow air into the loop so that all the liquid would come out into the drain port, but that did not work. So I guess my only option now is to sort of carefully disassemble the system, and I think I'll start with the GPU, disassemble that, carefully remove that, and then we can start sort of draining the loop properly. Also, something that I will mention is that this is the coolant that I was using, EK Cryofuel. It's an opaque coolant. This is the solid cloud white. So it's an opaque white coolant. And of course, with an opaque coolant, you do have the risk of it clumping up and blocking both the CPU and GPU block. And one of the first signs of that happening is actually sort of discoloration or less opaqueness and more of a translucent coolant. But it's actually exactly the same as sort of when I put it in. So that's a really good sign that nothing has happened. Of course, we will tear down both the CPU and GPU block and make sure that that is the case. Alright, so the system is mostly disassembled now and the hardest part is over. Thankfully there were no spills or leaks or anything like that. But I actually quickly wanted to show you guys what the RTX 2080 Ti block is looking like with this opaque coolant. I'm not sure how this is going to come out on camera, but Basically, there's no clogging at all that we can see in the fin stack, which is a huge thumbs up to EK with their opaque coolant. So here it is lastly again, it's their cryo fuel, it's solid cloud white. And I have had some clogging in the past with opaque coolants, which is kind of why I was expecting this to happen, but thankfully not today. And the CPU block is looking pretty good as well. We'll take a closer look at that in just a second when we pull the motherboard out. But this is a huge thumbs up because it means that I don't have to pull the physical block apart and actually get in there and scrub the fin stack. So here I can basically just rinse it out with distilled water and we're pretty much good to go for this block for the next build. So to answer the question of what happens to my PC builds, well, they pretty much all get torn down and then end up on the shelf right behind me. They get repurposed for future builds like the one you just saw, or they get repurposed for future testing. Either way, the parts that go and make these builds, whether it's a fully water-cooled build like this or a test system for a case review, for example, those parts go on to future content. They go on to contribute to make sort of more content and value for the channel. And the reality is the biggest possible return that I could make on buying those parts is just to keep making content with those parts. There's no point in making one video with the part and then just flipping it and trying to make a quick buck. All of those parts behind me will be more than likely seen in future videos. So I hope that answers the question. I don't just have multiple PCs just lying around my apartment doing nothing. Most of them do end up on shelves, which you will see in future videos. To give you guys a more specific example, the RTX 2080 Ti that was in Portal and is now on the table pulled apart will now be repurposed for future testing for CPU reviews, and it will actually be water-cooled in a new build coming up in a couple weeks. So all of the parts here are repurposed for future content, and that really is my end goal, to make better content for you guys, to make more content. There's no purpose in trying to sell them and make a minimal profit when in the end I can actually get more value out of them just by keeping them. So I hope that answers everything. I feel like I went into enough detail. If you still have more questions, feel free to leave them down below. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching. Consider subscribing down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.